Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really zeroing in on something pretty fundamental to how we feel every day. That's the connection between our emotions, what we eat, and how that really plays into our weight, our mental health, everything.
Yes, and for this deep dive, you've brought in some really insightful material. It focuses specifically on understanding and, maybe more importantly, overcoming emotional eating, which, let's face it, is something so many people grapple with.
Oh, absolutely. It's that classic thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You feel stressed, maybe sad, even just bored. And almost automatically, you find yourself reaching for that comfort food.
Mhm.
But what we want to unpack today, using your material, is how that search for comfort can, well, paradoxically trap us. It can lead to health struggles, personal struggles. It's a real cycle.
It really is.
So our mission here is pretty clear. Dig into this material, pull out the actionable stuff, the key insights, so you can feel more in control of emotional eating and ultimately make choices that genuinely boost your well-being. Ready to dive in?
Let's do it. So, the core of this emotional eating thing is fundamentally a negative feedback loop. It's quite clever in a detrimental way.
Okay, a feedback loop. How does that work?
Well, you feel a certain emotion, stress, sadness, whatever it might be. You eat something, often something specific you associate with comfort, and maybe, just maybe, you get a tiny fleeting moment of relief or distraction.
Right, but it doesn't actually fix the reason you felt bad in the first place.
Exactly. It doesn't address the root cause. And then often what comes next? Guilt, regret,
Ah, yes, the post-comfort food guilt trick,
which ironically can then trigger more negative feelings.
leading you right back to wanting more comfort food. Wow, okay, I see the loop.
Precisely. And it's not just a psychological thing, is it? Your material really emphasizes the physical side, too. What happens in the brain?
Yeah, talk about that, the physiological effects.
Right, so think about typical comfort foods. Often sugary, right, or high in processed carbs. Sugar triggers a dopamine release. That's the brain's reward system kicking in. Feels good.
Okay, dopamine. Got it.
And those processed carbohydrates, they can give you a boost in serotonin, another neurotransmitter linked to, mood and pleasure.
So your brain basically learns, hey, feeling low, this specific food, quick pleasure hit.
Absolutely. It makes that connection very quickly. And that's what fuels the cravings later on. The brain remembers.
But here's the kicker, right? The material stresses this point. The actual happiness, the deep satisfaction we think we're getting from that food, it's never really there.
It's an illusion, a very temporary fix for something much deeper that remains unaddressed. The pleasure vanishes almost instantly once you swallow.
The satisfaction is gone, but the emotion, still there.
It's still there. And this leads to another really interesting concept in the material you shared.
Yeah.
Viewing each meal as a kind of transaction or a pact.
A transaction. Okay, explain that. How is eating a transaction?
Well, the idea is that every time you choose what to eat, you're essentially making an agreement with yourself. You're deciding,
Ah.
is this choice an investment in my long-term health, my energy, my quality of life,
Or is it a withdrawal?
or is it a withdrawal? Is it prioritizing a few fleeting seconds of pleasure over potentially much longer-term negative consequences for your physical and mental state?
That's a stark way to put it. Trading seconds of mouth pleasure for, well, potentially hours or days
Yeah.
of feeling sluggish or regretful or further from your goals.
Exactly. And the material makes a really astute observation alongside this.
Yeah.
People who constantly chase happiness in food.
They're rarely actually happy people, are they?
It seems not. It suggests that happiness isn't found at the bottom of a tub of ice cream or a bag of chips. It's like trying to fill an emotional void with something physical. It just doesn't fit.
Okay, so that really underscores the need to figure out why we're reaching for the food in the first place.
That's the critical step, according to the material. Real control, lasting control, doesn't come from just white-knuckling it against cravings every single time.
It comes from insight.
It comes from insight, recognizing when you're using food to cope, to numb, to avoid dealing with something else.
So pausing and asking, okay, hang on. What's really going on here? Am I actually hungry or am I feeling stressed, bored, lonely?
Precisely that. And the material argues very strongly that when you address those underlying issues directly, instead of trying to eat your way around them, that's where the real win is.
That's where you find genuine self-control.
Yes. And not just control, but pride, satisfaction, and ultimately a more stable and authentic happiness because you've dealt with the real issue.
That makes so much sense. You're solving the right problem. Okay, and the material also touches on how the types of food we choose when we're emotional eating can actually make things worse. Right.
Yeah.
Beyond just the calories.
Yes, there's a fascinating link drawn between certain types of food and mental clarity.
Mental clarity. How so?
The material explains that foods known to promote inflammation in the body.
Okay, things like highly processed foods, lots of sugar, unhealthy fats.
Exactly those kinds of things. They can contribute to what the material calls a clouded mind.
A clouded mind. So brain fog, making it harder to think straight.
Precisely. It hinders your ability to actually cope with the problems that might have triggered the emotional eating in the first place. It's another vicious cycle.
Wow. So the food you eat to feel better might actually be making it harder to deal with what's making you feel bad.
That's the connection the material makes. It links diet directly to mental well-being. An inflammatory diet, maybe combined with poor sleep, which of course diet heavily influences, that whole picture can potentially mess with neurotransmitters crucial for mood. It might contribute to feelings of depression or just make it generally harder to overcome challenges.
And it mentioned lack of sunlight in there too as another factor.
Yes, that was noted as another potential contributor in the mix. It's all interconnected: diet, sleep, environment, mood. This inflammation isn't just systemic. It can affect the brain, interfering with cognitive function, emotional regulation.
Making it even harder to make good decisions, including about food. Okay, so we get the cycle, the illusion of happiness and comfort food, the need to find the root cause, and how the food itself can impact our mental state.
Yeah.
Let's shift to solutions, practical stuff. The material brought up this idea of the power of just saying no. It's something called the 5-second rule. Tell us about that.
Right. This is a very direct, very actionable strategy. It starts with the premise that you need to consciously practice saying no to those unhealthy choices when the urge strikes.
Okay, building the no muscle.
Building the no muscle. And the 5-second rule is presented as a tool to help you do that. The core argument is quite simple. No food, realistically, provides more than about 5 seconds of actual intense pleasure.
5 seconds, that seems short.
Think about it. It's really just while the food is physically in your mouth, that initial taste, texture.
That first bite of the chocolate or the chip,
Wow.
that's the peak.
That's the peak. Once you swallow, that specific intense pleasure is essentially gone. It might linger as a taste, but the peak experience is over in seconds.
I never really thought about quantifying it like that.
And the rule uses this to frame the choice. You contrast those mere 5 seconds of pleasure with the potential hours of negative consequences.
The regret, the physical discomfort, feeling like you've derailed your effort.
Exactly. So the choice becomes, do I endure maybe 5 seconds of perceived suffering or deprivation by saying no right now?
Versus hours of feeling bad later.
Versus hours of regret, physical impact, a mental burden. And conversely, saying no brings that immediate sense of control and long-term pride.
It reframes the deprivation as incredibly short-lived and the reward for saying no as much more substantial and lasting.
Precisely. It shifts the power dynamic in that moment of decision.
And to help strengthen that no, the material used an analogy I found really interesting, the committed relationship one.
Ah, yes, that's a good one. It compares saying no to unhealthy food impulses to, say, remaining faithful in a committed relationship.
How does that parallel work?
Well, the idea is if you've made a clear, conscious commitment to a person when faced with an opportunity for infidelity, the no often comes relatively easily, right?
Hopefully, because you've already decided what's truly important. Your commitment is primary.
Exactly. Your prior decision guides your current action. The material suggests you can apply that same logic to your health choices. Make a conscious, upfront decision to prioritize your well-being. Then, when temptation arises,
That prior commitment makes saying no feel more automatic, more aligned with who you've decided to be.
that's the goal. It makes the no less of a battle in the moment and more of an affirmation of a decision you've already made.
And it even suggested a tangible action for this, literally writing down the word no.
Yes, as a physical symbol of that commitment, the act of writing it solidifies the intention.
Like creating a visual contract with yourself.
Kind of, and the advice is to keep that written no somewhere visible. On the fridge, maybe. In your wallet. Desk.
Somewhere you'll see it when those cravings tend to hit.
Right. It serves as a visual prompt, a reminder of your deeper commitment, helping to counteract that impulsive urge. The material suggested this simple act can really strengthen your resolve.
So it really boils down to shifting perspective again. It's not the food itself, it's the enemy.
No, food is just food.
It's the decision. The choice to use unhealthy food as a response to an emotional trigger. That's the point of intervention.
Exactly. The negative consequences, weight gain, inflammation, Foggy thinking they happen inside your body because you ate the food, not because the food existed on the shelf.
Right. The power lies in the act of choosing or not choosing
Hmm.
to consume it. It puts the control firmly back with you.
It does, which ties into that larger theme in the material about how we view our bodies.
Ah, yes. Seeing the body as more than just a vehicle.
Yes, framing it as a gift, something valuable entrusted to us, designed for living a long, healthy, vibrant life. And connecting healthy choices not just to weight loss, but to a bigger personal mission. Striving to be your best self, honoring that gift.
And that has ripples, doesn't it? The material mentioned the impact on future generations.
It did. Thinking about your kids, your grandkids, being healthy means being around longer for them, being able to engage more fully with them.
And also setting an example, right? Modeling healthy habits.
Absolutely. It's about creating a legacy of well-being that extends beyond just yourself. It's quite profound when you think about it that way.
It really is. So, wrapping this up, the core message feels incredibly empowering. It's saying you do have the choice. You do have the power to take back control.
You do. By recognizing what's driving the emotional eating, and by learning to wield the power of no, armed with tools like that 5-second reality check.
Choosing your long-term well-being over that incredibly brief, fleeting comfort.
That's the essence of it, making conscious choices that serve the life you truly want to live.
This has been incredibly clarifying,
Yeah.
really valuable deep dive. So for everyone listening, now that you understand just how short-lived that pleasure from comfort food really is, especially compared to the lasting impact of your choices, maybe ask yourself, what's one small no you can commit to today? Just one thing that will serve your future self, your long-term well-being.
Mm-hmm. A great question to ponder.
Definitely give it some thought. Reflect on your own patterns, and maybe try out that 5-second rule next time an urge hits. Thanks for exploring this with us today.